Trump has been floating the idea of expanding the US territory. There is no definitive plan, but language found in posts like this indicate that he is looking for opportunities to do so. The focus is definitely on Greenland, which Trump called an absolute necessity, citing national security and the furthering of freedom throughout the world. But he has also mentioned taking control of the Panama Canal, again citing national security, along with extreme fees being charged by Panama, according to him. And the final target is Canada. The tone here has been more relaxed, jokingly referring to the Prime Minister as the Governor of Canada, but given the other statements around Greenland and Panama, this language is a little bit more significant. So in this video, let's go ahead and break down the historical context for such a move, the strategic importance of these land masses, and finally, what this new buffed version of America might actually look like. So the centerpiece here is the discussion around Greenland, which is by far the most logistically practical and potentially the most beneficial to actually expanding US power, influence, and regional security. And the mechanism in which the US can go about acquiring Greenland would be through a purchase. And historically, buying land is a fairly normal thing. Even the US has done this many times with the Louisiana Purchase from France in 1803 and the purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867. As of right now, Greenland is currently an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, originally seized by them in 1775. And interestingly enough, the US has purchased land from Denmark before. It was 1917, and at the time it was known as the Dutch Virgin Islands. In addition to this history, during World War II, the US already took control of Greenland to protect it while Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany. During this time, the US set up the Thule Air Force Base, which is still owned and operated by the US, and it is a huge boost to the local economy. And speaking of the economy, this is the main reason Greenland is still an autonomous territory of Denmark. Without the support of a nearly $560 million annual grant, the local government of Greenland would not have the revenues to function independently. So the act of purchasing Greenland from Denmark has historical precedent, and for the actual population of the island, US control may be beneficial in the form of a higher annual budget and larger investments and resulting opportunity. And the US government will be happy to invest this money because of the strategic importance of the island. And to explain this further, if we take a look at the world from this perspective, we can begin to see why Greenland is so strategically valuable, especially for a country like the United States. It sits pretty much right in between Moscow and Washington, D.C., and that's why the Thule Air Force Base on the island was so crucial during the Cold War, as it acted as an early warning missile detection system. And of course, under full US control, these bases and the capabilities here can be advanced even further. But military bases is just the tip of the iceberg, because as the ice melts, the importance of Greenland becomes even more expansive in two main ways. The first is via untapped natural resources. It is thought that the Arctic region may be home to the richest land on the planet in terms of natural resources. And for Greenland in particular, the current estimate is that it is home to over 50 billion barrels of oil and potentially trillions of cubic feet of natural gas reserves. This would roughly double the already vast reserves located in the current United States. It's also believed that 25% of the planet's rare earth elements are found in Greenland. There's also vast reserves of iron, nickel, copper, and even uranium, which again can prove to be invaluable as the world appears to be shifting back to nuclear energy projects. And the second hugely valuable thing about Greenland, especially as the ice melts, is access to the Northwest Passage. This is a shipping route that connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans via a northerly route. When you compare this passage to the Panama Canal, New York to Shanghai is roughly 7,000 kilometers shorter via the Northwest Passage versus the Panama Canal. And while most of the passageway goes through Canadian waters, you're going to notice that both of the key entry points are controlled by other countries. One is by Alaska, which is already controlled by the United States, and the other is Greenland. So if the US also controlled this landmass, it would essentially have complete dominance over this very strategic emerging trade route. So for many reasons, Greenland is a core target when it comes to US expansion. Logistically, it's the most feasible, it's resource rich, and it occupies a strategic position that is crucial and complementary to the United States. Now, Trump also did mention adding the Panama Canal to the shopping list of US territorial expansion, and this would boost US power and control in the region, but the logistics are more complex here, as the US would not control the entire country, but rather have joint ownership of the canal zone. And the only way for this to happen is via economic pressure imposed by the US in the form of tariffs and sanctions to force joint control over this asset. And then the final target is Canada and the potential for it to be annexed and become the 51st state of the Union. Now, this again is a very different, complex situation, but technically, it can happen at any time if the Canadian people vote for this in a referendum. According to the latest polling, roughly 20% of Canadians think that they would be better off if they joined the United States. So as of now, a majority of Canadians do not want to join the US, but this could change over time, especially if the US economy continues to defy expectations and if the Canadian economy continues to have its own problems. But okay, let's assume that Trump gets his way and the US does end up purchasing Greenland. Canada decides to join the US, and he gains some level of control over the Panama Canal zone. What would this new America actually look like? So the new economic output, or the GDP, would be upwards of $32 trillion, which is roughly a 10% boost to its current size, but potentially more importantly would be the new strategic position of the country and its vast array of natural resources, which would allow the new country to grow at an even faster rate in the future. Altogether, Greenland, Canada, and the US would command 20 to 25% of all global fresh water, 15% of global oil reserves, and a whopping 30+% of rare earth elements. And the key thing here is the US has the capital and the companies to actually make the proper investments to take advantage of all this potential. Strategically, the new US would dominate the Arctic and have full control over the Northwest Passage. And with joint control over the Panama Canal, US ships would have priority access and the ability to potentially deny adversaries access from using and benefiting from this canal. In short, this new buffed United States would occupy the most strategic lands in the world with access to every natural resource it needs to be globally dominant and self-reliant. I mean, just the purchase of Greenland alone would drastically improve America's global dominance. So whether or not you agree with this idea, you really can't deny that it would be a huge net positive for the United States and its global projection of power.